Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a super exciting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Off Grid Knives Mamba V3. Oh boy, I am a big fan of the Off Grid Knives aesthetic. I'm always happy with the stuff that they send in, and it just, gosh, I'm being a little bit main character-y, right? But I feel like Off Grid Knives made this knife for me. This checks a lot of personal boxes. And, this is on the larger side. But they do make knives that are not nearly as large. They're worth checking out in general. I'll link this knife and all of their stuff down in the description so that you guys can check it out if you want to. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Before I gush about this, because spoiler alert, I really like it, let's go ahead and do some specs here. So overall length of the Mamba V3 is coming in at 9.25. Yeah, it's 9.25. That's a big boy. Maybe just slightly less than 9.25. Blade length is coming in 4 inches. Cutting edge is coming in at about 3.8, possibly 3.85. It's big, is what I'm saying. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. So up against the 8010 and the 8020.5, it's big, right? It is even bigger than something like the 8010, which no one would describe as a small knife. Obviously massive compared to the 8020.5. In a lot of ways, before I move on here, this feels like a less expensive Hinderer XM-24, almost like an alternate universe, less expensive XM-24. I am a huge fan of Hinderer knives and the aesthetic and the feel, right? So this, in that way, right? If you think like me, this is very cool. And in a lot of ways, I think it's actually better. But we'll get into that. Let's go ahead and put it up against the Spyderco PM2, which is way up here today. Sorry about that. Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Once again, definitely larger. And let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How is the action on this knife? This knife is manufactured by Bestech. That's the OEM, and Bestech does a really good job. But these knives tend to translate with Bestech, like off-grid knives in general tend to translate with Bestech really, really well. Access to the lock bar is plentiful. It's not cut lower on the show side scale, but there's plenty of room. It's very comfortable. That flipper tab comes down, contacts your thumb with the detent ball well up on the face of the blade. A little bit of encouragement gets the blade to fall down into the closed position. Absolutely phenomenal detent and a very large but comfortable flipper tab. This is one of the ways that I feel like it's better than the XM-24. Honestly, these days, pretty much any flipper is better than the XM-18 and XM-24 because of that obnoxious hook shape. Now, this still has a little bit of that, but not nearly as much. In my opinion, way easier, way more comfortable to light switch and even push button. The detent is probably medium heavy, not what I describe as heavy, but perfect considering the blade is pretty large, right? Very, very satisfying, very reliable, very easy to manipulate. If you want to sit around the couch and fidget with it, fine. If you're going to go out and use it, you just want it to deploy so that you can get the job done, you're good to go. It's got one means of deployment, and that one means of deployment is done perfectly. I have no complaints. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Here's another way that a lot of people would consider it better than the XM-24. I know it's kind of a weird comparison, but kind of not. This isn't nearly as thick. In fact, it's only slightly thicker than the Spyderco Para 3 without feeling like a dainty large knife. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This and the weight is where, a lot of people are going to say, hey, it might be a little bit too big for me. But lengthwise, it is definitely longer than both the PM2 and Para 3. And honestly, also height-wise, it's at least the same, including the flipper tab. So it's definitely going to take up a lot of room in your pocket. If you're not used to a bigger knife, this is going to be pretty jarring. It's going to be something you'll have to adapt to, but it's not so big that it's impossible to carry. It's not like a cartoonish object to carry in your pocket. There are plenty of people out there who will regularly carry knives of this size, and if you enjoy carrying knives of this size, this one's actually on the easier side to carry. Weight. What are we looking at for materials? They call this Coyote Gold. This is the line where gray turns into bronze, and for some reason, it's really satisfying to me. It's not quite that hyper bronze that you see on a lot of Wii knives, and it's also obviously not gray, and the contrast is perfect with the gray PVD coating that is on the blade. This knife also comes in blackout. If you're like, I don't really like gray or, bronze, you get the blackout one, right? But this combination, I absolutely love it. And I think it works really, really well with this texturing, which is deceivingly non-aggressive. It looks like, and I'm sure that people are already in the comments going, yeah, cool knife, but that's going to tear up your pants. It is nowhere near as deep as it looks. Look at this. It's actually really nice to the touch. It's not aggressive at all, but enough to create traction. But anyways, we'll get to that. This silvery bronze coyote, whatever they call it, it just looks cool. And I like the angry golf ball texturing too. I think that just looks great, especially in contrast with the blade. This is MagnaCut, marking one of the first times I've ever seen them use it. What's the HRC? 62. Ask the vast majority of the knife community what range they prefer MagnaCut to be in. Most of them will say 62 to 64. Sometimes you got people say it's got to be 63, 64. In my opinion, from what I've seen, 62 to 64 is plenty optimized for a pocket knife. This knife is on the more robust side, and certainly what most people would describe as an outdoor folding knife, meaning you're going to be doing a lot of heavy processing of material. I'm not talking about chopping and prying and all that caveman garbage. I'm talking about using a knife the way that you're supposed to. But with this being on the lower end of what most people would consider to be optimal, I think it's probably pretty purposeful. It's going to be slightly easier to touch up and still maintain all of the qualities that you're going to want from MagnaCut, including good edge stability and toughness and ease of maintenance, right? It also still has all the stainless qualities. I think 62 is fine. It's when we get back closer to 60 or below when I'm like, ugh, that's why you're just losing out on the benefits of MagnaCut. But 62 to 64, I think that's fine. They advertise this as 62, and I think that's 2 thumbs up from me. I think that's great. So, MagnaCut, titanium, then we have a titanium backspacer, and we also have, it's not a milled, but a stamped titanium clip. Not what people love to see when we're talking like dollar for dollar. You're trying to get the best, the shiniest, all of that. But functionally, it's very, very good. I really don't have a problem with it. I'm happy that they at least went with titanium. You also have some milling on the inside of the scales for weight reduction. I bet this still comes in high 5, low 6. 6. So there you go. It's a 6-ounce knife with a 4-inch blade, and honestly, the balance is closer to the pivot than I thought it was going to be. I'm not really mad about that at all. So yeah, it's a big knife. It weighs about what I'd expect it to weigh. So there you go. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to go ahead and get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel, or the pinned comment. I bet these are all T8. T8 for the pivot. We have T8 for the unnecessary stop pin screws. This probably should have been just floating or pressed in there, whatever you want to call that. But okay, at least it's T8. Then you have a T8 body screw here. This is a T8. The pocket clip screws or the filler tab screws are going to be T6, but pretty standard stuff. Very, very easy to take apart and put back together as long as you have the right tools for the job. You should be good to go. Blade stock thickness. If I haven't mentioned it, this is another way that most people consider this to be optimal over the XM-24, which is just, again, what I'm just choosing to compare it to. 156 thousandths versus the XM-24's 187 or 190 thousandths. Even the skinny XM, I believe, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the skinny XM-24 is 145 thousandths, but I thought it was closer to 165 thousandths. In any case, this is thinner than the standard XM-24 and definitely has better cutting geometry down here for sure. So there you go. Let's move on into the meat and potatoes. What a good looking knife. I don't always love what I'm going to call lazily a reverse Tano. Tano? A reverse Tanto. I don't love that blade shape on every knife profile, but I think it looks really, really good here, and I think it's plenty purposeful. You have a thin enough blade geometry that it's going to excel at your, the cutting tasks that you would expect to use a knife like this for, right? You need a full grip. You need the texturing. You're going to go out and probably process some more heavy-duty materials for a longer period of time than you would use, say, the Ontario Rat Model 2, right? So I think the geometry is good for that. You still have a tip, right? It's plenty sharp. Bestech does a great factory edge. I love the gray PVD on this. I think it looks awesome. Something that is a big benefit of this one, if I remember correctly, the Mamba V2 had the little scallops on the sides of the blade, but nothing on the spine, making it essentially useless aesthetic jimping. This actually has jimping on the spine, which is fantastic. Ergonomically, this has so much open room. It is super comfortable. And again, it looks like this would be super aggressive and bite into your hands. No, it's actually really pleasant to the touch. I love this texturing. I also am a big fan of continuous patterns. This has that kind of like quintessential American knife look to it. A lot of people said, what Off Grid's doing right now is kind of like what ZT should be doing, especially when we're looking at the Off Grid V3. This could have easily been something that was dropped by ZT. But yeah, I agree with that. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I love. This makes me think of ZT 2013 to 2017, right? Especially right around that 2014, 2015 area. That's what it makes me think of. It's just really good. The handle profile, super classic, very, very XM-24, right? Or ZT-0560. That's what it kind of makes me think of. If you've never seen that knife, look it up. But yeah, very comfortable, very open, nice lock-in. You can actually choke back a bit, choke up. Everywhere is comfortable. I don't have a problem with it. Flat scale's not contoured, but nicely chamfered at the edges. No area of this knife feels overly sharp or unfinished. It's just straight up comfortable. The pocket clip ends. It's a longer clip, but it does end before the 50% line on the handle. So if you're choked up here, the bill of the clip is going more so in here. And it's also not a super prominent bill. It's pretty shallow. There's no bald spot underneath the pocket clip. But like I said, the texturing is not super aggressive, so it'll take much longer for this to fray up your pockets over time. And if they did that on one side, they'd have to do it on the other, because lefties, there's a spot for you to remove the filler tab, which also kind of gives it that hinderer look, but more importantly, allows lefty people to carry it. They would have to have one on this side, right? Which means you'd be able to see it if the pocket, whichever side the pocket clip is not mounted on, you'd be able to see it. That would be weird, right? So I can understand why they didn't do it. If they had made this texturing a lot more aggressive, it would have been a huge problem in and out of the pocket. But my experience is no, it's super easy to get in and out of the pocket. One hand, no problem. Just really, really good. We have off-grid knives on one side. On this side, it says CPM MagnaCut, and that's how they left it. They didn't put anything else on it. I think that's perfect. As far as acceptable things to put on the blade, right? You can put little designer logo. You can put the company behind the knife. You can put the steel. But most of the time, people want that stuff pretty small, and we don't want to see anything else. We don't want to see a bunch of weird codes. We definitely don't want to see a paragraph about the complete history and the favorite color and, the rom-com preferences of the manufacturer. Microtech. Oh, sorry, it's weird cough there. We definitely don't want to see all that crap. So thank you very much for keeping it minimal. Really, really nice. Sorry, something stuck in my throat there. But yeah, good look. The adjustment head of the pivot is on the other side of the knife, and the hardware all matches with like the blade and the filler tab and everything like that. I wish that they had done the backspacer, the same gray PVD as the blade, but this is fine. No big deal. Oh no lanyard hole. So anyways, the pocket clip is deep carry, truly deep carry. It is nested into the titanium, and the screws are recessed, which is the trifecta of how you want well, you don't have to have it deep carry, but I like this, right? I like where it's mounted. It's just great. It's just a nice, straightforward, functional clip. I got no complaints there. You have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop, so that's great. You have bearings. If you didn't put that together, it's running on bearings. We have a little bit of shouldering right here, wrap around the stop pin, no blade play, up, down, left to right, no lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash, very smooth, very consistent in here, and a nice, super satisfying, clicky detents. Really, really nice. I think I have flipped this so much. Am I wrong? I think I maybe have flipped this slightly off center. Perhaps. Let's take a look at this one. Between the two, the flipping action, that one looks fine to me. Am I just looking at this wrong? I actually can't. I got to move my, let me put my fingers in the back. I think I'm actually just looking at this wrong. Maybe slightly. Is it slightly? I can't tell. Maybe I'm just playing tricks on myself. In any case, slight adjustment to the pivot if it is off-centered. Slight adjustment to the body screws should bring it back. I wouldn't worry about that. These knives are really, really nice, and they come in at a base price of $258, I think. I got no complaint. This is a big knife. This is a nice looking knife. We have texturing on the titanium. You've got a nice open ergonomic profile. You've got a balanced large knife design. You've got Magna Cut. You've got cool PVD coatings. This is great. You got a lot of companies skipping on this stuff in the $250 territory, and I feel like Off Grid delivered pretty much everything that we would expect outside of a milled clip. But honestly, with them having made it out of titanium and the fact that this particular clip is so functional, I don't really care. I like pretty much everything about this knife. If you don't like large knives or you don't like flippers, then this knife isn't going to be for you, but that's preference. As far as the design goes, as far as functionality, execution, all of that value, I think it's there, right? Some people are going to wish that their Magna Cut was a little harder, but I feel like the people who take this thing out and use it and then have to resharpen it are probably going to appreciate that 62, right? You'll have just as many people arguing that 62, 63 is the best as you will, you'll have the equal amount of people saying 63, 64. I think on a smaller, thinner, daily pocket knife, I think you're 63, 64, but on something like this, I think 62, 63 is right there. And then if you're going to go lower, it should probably be a fixed blade, right? Whatever you're going to do with it would probably involve, a need for additional toughness, which is why the Magna Cut range is so wide, right? So I don't have a problem with that HRC. This is a stupidly recommendable knife. I have liked pretty much everything that Off Grid Knives has put out there. They found that weird perfect balance between like cringe tactical and actually cool, right? They kind of captured the best elements of that look and put it on. When I'm talking about tactical, I'm talking about those Junko disaster knives, the Smith & Wesson Extreme Ops, and it's got like the seatbelt color and the cutter and the glass breaker and the Tanto serrated and it's just, oh God, you might as well like type on there like, this is a military knife, military, do you like military, cool, please buy this knife. Like that should be on the blade. It's just, but they still managed to take that cool tactical look, the elements of it that actually look nice, and then put it on a knife in a functional way and give it a functional, cool, tactical look, right? There's nothing overly unnecessary about the aesthetic here. Everything that they've done is functional. It's just maybe a little bit of embellishment up here, right? And you could say the anodizing and stuff like that, but it's just a nice, big, functional design that feels like pure quality. I like it. I love it. I recommend it. Definitely something that you guys should check out, especially if you're like, man, love the way the XM-24 looks from Hinder Knives, don't want to pay $625 for one or $825 for one in full titanium, right? I mean, that knife's made in the United States, so it's going to cost a lot more money. But this is a wonderful alternative. It really is. And it's got better cutting geometry. A lot of people would say a better functional blade for day-to-day stuff or outdoor stuff, right? Really cool. Love the texturing. Awesome stuff from Off Grid Knives. I'll link it down in the description. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on the Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.